Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm walking around downtown White Center, which is a little bit of a misnomer since White Center isn't that big of a area, but it's early in the morning and nobody's open yet. And I just wanted to shoot this video to give you an idea about the concept of the cultural landscape. I'll be walking around with Nelson here. Say hi, buddy. Hey, say hi. Nelson, say hi. There you go. Okay, so he'll be walking with me. Might slow us down a little bit, but I wanted to take on a little walk here through this neighborhood. I live near here. It's not super close to my house, but it's pretty close. And point out a couple of things that make up the cultural landscape. Now, one of the ideas of the cultural landscape is that it's everything that we do to modify the environment. So one of the most obvious things behind me is the major road. That's a major part of American cultural landscapes. We take it for granted, but having a road this wide, we've got spaces for parking on both sides and a wide lane for cars and trucks on every side, is not something we see in every place in the world. There's places with narrower roads or even streets that you can barely fit a car, one car down, and then you have different setups with narrow alleys and thoroughfares and that kind of thing. So we've got pretty wide roads. It's what we would call automobile-oriented development. That's a major feature of this cultural landscape. And because we've made this city for cars, and this is true of a lot of American cities again, we've got lots of parking spaces available. So not only along the side of the road, but also that major parking lot over there that services this building. The building is a community health center, CMR Health Center. You can see some graffiti there as well. There's been a lot of little clues in the scene here to this cultural landscape I've shown you so far that this neighborhood is economically developing, or we could just say poor, and that has to do with the litter we've seen around, the graffiti we've seen around. All those are indicators that it's a fairly urban setting, but also a poor urban setting. And as I've been sort of rotating the view here, I think you might notice as well there's quite a bit of diversity in the neighborhood. There's a place behind me there called White Center Plaza. White Center Plaza sells a bunch of clothes, shoes, that kind of thing. And then there is a Mexican restaurant here behind the big parking lot. On the other side there is a carniceria, which is a Mexican butcher. Just on the other side of that, there's a Vietnamese restaurant, sells pho and other Vietnamese food. So that's showing some of the diversity of the cultural landscape of, some of the diversity of the cultural landscape here, which is that White Center has long been a home for recent immigrants to the U.S. Lots of people from Central America, so places like El Salvador. A lot of people have settled in the region. Mexico is a major source of migrants for people moving to White Center, and also people from Vietnam and Cambodia. There's a Cambodian Grocery a couple streets down from where I am right now. So that diversity shows itself not just in the people you might see walking around the streets, but also in the kinds of shops that you see established around here. I'm turning the corner now, and there's a bank, lots of banks in cities, of course. But right over here is where there's a major taco stand. The taco truck pulls up every morning, or I guess, in time for lunch it pulls up. I don't know exactly when it shows up. But really great tacos if you want them. And the other thing I want to show while we're walking through the neighborhood here, though, is that it's changing. And this is not a massive historical change, it's a gradual change. Sorry, I got a guy with a leaf blower over here, so hopefully you can hear me over all that. But I want to show you this corner right here, and so on the building next to me here, I'll pull over here and you can take a look. There's this mural here that's celebrating the culture of Cambodia. This is a Cambodian Grocery, and you can see these murals. Sorry, I had somebody who wanted to be in the shot. Anyway, Cambodian Grocery right behind me here, and then as I rotate, you can see back to where we were coming, and then there is a chain moving in there, the Baka Bak fried chicken, and then a little gym and a Vietnamese restaurant on the corner that's been there for a while. Now, one of the things that's happening here in White Center is White Center is just outside of Seattle. It's between Seattle and Burien, and it's not actually a city. It's not a real city. It's unincorporated King County. What's been happening is as Seattle gets bigger and bigger and richer, people are looking for more affordable property, and they've been moving out in greater numbers to places like White Center. So what we're seeing is places like this barbecue shop right there, and then this Beer Star tap house opening, and really changing the character of the neighborhood a little bit. It was sort of a really low rent, really, I would say a little bit seedy. Actually, I didn't show you this, but over my shoulder there, you can see there's a adult video shop right there. And so the neighborhood's character is changing. A lot of people would argue for the better if you don't like having a lot of really sort of cheap bars and adult video stores in the neighborhood. But the process that we're seeing is called by geographers something called gentrification. Gentrification has its critics because what happens with a neighborhood that gentrifies is that richer people move into the neighborhood and displace some of the poorer people. That very often comes at the price of some of the ethnic diversity and socioeconomic diversity of the neighborhood. So gentrification is not always seen as a good thing, except for by the people who are moving in. In particular, it's happening in places like, it's happening in Seattle, but it's happening in places like San Francisco to a great extent. So, some more details about the cultural landscape. We've talked about the diversity of shops and the people who live in the neighborhood, the way that the landscape has been modified to be suitable for cars. Not that suitable for people, to be honest, because it's wide streets and long walks between places. It would be, if it was more compact, it would be even easier to walk around. But we get an idea about how we've built the landscape to be favorable to driving and parking. And you can see that it's urban, so we've got buildings that are mostly shops and retail spaces, but it's not that densely occupied. Most of the buildings are one story and a few of them are 2 stories on this block, and this is right near the center. So you can see in some urban areas where people live much higher than this. I could continue discussing the cultural landscape by walking into the neighborhoods around here and talking about the style of housing. It's mostly single family housing. I guess you can maybe see some of that over my shoulder back there in the distance. In the center of the frame now, there's some housing back in there, but smaller houses built in the 1900s to early 1900s is actually too early. I would say this community really got its start in the 1930s or 40s, and then really boomed in the 40s and 50s. But smaller family houses, single family houses on sort of medium-sized to smallish lots, and not super high quality construction in terms of what the best houses are made out of, but certainly fine for living in. Anyway, I hope that gives you a good picture of the cultural landscape and what we describe when we think about where we live and how we've built it to live in. Thank you very much. Have a great day.